Because, I mean,
Yeah.
6 inches in your toast, bud.
Yeah, don't push away at all for any reason. Keep
Nope.
her nice and tight. Yeah. I feel like that would be such a weird thing. There must be some off the trail too, because I feel like I would almost rather go around. Well, no, I wouldn't want to separate from you or Richard, I guess.
No, I think in a situation like this, separation is death.
Yeah.
You need to stay together and work as a team because you need 4 eyes and 2 wits about you.
It was just the thought of like, I don't know, I can picture it in my head of 2 people floating kind of like semi in the trail, you know? So you have to get close to each other to get through them, but it seems silly if there's nobody on the outsides of that. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems like an awkward thing.
Maybe the shadow people can't get into the boundary because there's something different and not technically dead.
Yeah, we don't know. Like,
And you know what? It just now occurs to me that maybe Terry Goodkind would know the answer to this. I'm assuming he would, and maybe if asked about it, he would say that the shadow people would never tell. They will never tell.
oh, like the thing that he was talking about might be about the shadow people?
Yeah, it could be. It's right away in the beginning of the book, and this is as beginning of the book or series. Maybe he said beginning of the series. So it could be anything in this book, but he said it was something here, and they will never tell.
I think at the very least, it's not a bad idea to keep bringing that thought up throughout this book so we can keep analyzing what that could be about, because I don't literally no fucking idea.
Yeah, there's no way we could actually get an answer for that here now, unfortunately. But ever since we heard that from the Ask Me Anything, I want to do this.
You want to figure it out?
I have been determined to figure out what it is. Or at least try.
Well, I'm right here with you. All of a sudden, a giant black boulder looms in front of Richard and Kahlan. Split down the middle. It's the Narrows. They press their backs up against the boulder at the split. Okay, this was a little bit confusing to me at first. I didn't really understand exactly what was going on. I had to go back and try to figure out the logistics of everything because they put their backs up against it and then in a second they are walking sideways. And I figured it out. I guess I just didn't understand the purpose at first of putting their backs up against it and looking back at the trail if they're going forward.
Well, I think it's because there's really not much to see once you're in this big crack in the rock. There's forward and there's backwards. And forward, it's just dark. And backwards is maybe the remnants of the light because it's essentially fucking nighttime now, right?
Right. So you're saying it's like pitch fucking black forward into the crack. But if they look backwards, they still have some semblance of like moonlight.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's fleeting because now they're entering this big crack in the rock.
They're about to, and it says that they cannot go through the split. It says they couldn't make it through the Narrows without the light from the Nightstone.
Right.
One wrong step and they would be dead. Is this because there's like rocks and shit on the ground so you could trip?
I kind of feel like the Narrows is a piece of stone that has been pushed up, like over millions of years. And so there's a crack in this stone, and that's the path people use to travel. But we're talking like a gigantic fucking rock, not a rock you hold in your hand, or not a rock about as tall as a guy and maybe 3 foot wide. We're talking about a mountain-sized rock.
Just like, forgive me, everybody, if you don't care for Disney references, but it's like Finding Nemo.
Yes, I know the reference you're talking about. I kind of think it's like that, but not really, because we're not talking up and down, it's left and right. I know that sounds a little silly, but I believe this is a mountainous-sized rock, and the path that they have to get through, they have to be at least facing each other and pressed together to fit through, okay?
Yeah.
So they are pinned in. They don't have a whole lot of movement at all, but it's a rock, so it's not like it's a flat wall. But the area that they have to walk in is very, very small, and they have to be close together to be able to fit through. But there is room for them to take a step or two to either side, and I believe that is covered by the boundary. So if they were to lose their balance, say, and take a step back, because they're so close together and in an awkward position, they would be stepping into the boundary. It's that close. But it's not just like a stone they have to step through. It's like a fucking mountain. They have a path to do this weird shimmy thing down.
Right. I guess I kind of assumed because it was so fucking tight that, I mean, there's no room to go to either side. So, like, you only got one path to go down. Why the fuck do you need the light exactly? Because, I mean, just be careful. Like, don't step too fast. Feel your way. You'll be fine. But I mean, maybe you're right. There is parts that the boundary like seeps in because it's not exactly a straight line.
Right. Or the side of this path is kind of concave. So there's not stone there, but there is boundary there.
Well, either way, before they go in, Richard dumps the night stone into his hand. Light flares out all around, lighting the woods and casting eerie shadows, like they need more of those. Kahlan gasped when they saw a wall of the shadow things. Hundreds of them, without an inch between them. They formed a half circle less than 20 feet away, and on the ground are dozens and dozens of humped creatures with armored bands and jagged spikes. Those are fucking grippers.
Gross!
Yeah.
I'm sorry, those are the worst. Anybody that has been listening to this podcast or our other podcast, All the Things Harry Potter, go check it out if you haven't, knows that I am not a fan of bugs. And these things are the things of my nightmares. Literally nightmare fuel.
They're like literally creepy potato bugs.
Of death.
Yeah.
That eat feet.
Giant ones.
Whole feet.
Yeah.
Ugh, I'm sorry. Grippers are the most horrifying thing I could almost ever think of. Just, you can't do anything to it. You can't defend yourself against it other than being faster than it. But in any situation, you're sleeping, you're fucked.
Okay. Couple things though. First of all.
And an axe won't kill it.
Right.
And if an axe won't kill it, no.
First of all, the image that you get in your brain when you're reading this scene where like the light flares on and there's all this creepy shit around you. Ugh! Terrible. Second of all, I mean, this is where I'm like, I don't know why you would like look behind you. It seems stupid. I get this. It's probably logical, but in my brain I'm like, don't look behind you. That's bad. Don't do it. The wall? I'm assuming the wall isn't just like one layer of shadow people though. Like they're standing on each other, right? Like floating?
Well, they're floating, but I think that they're like a group of people gathered. The boundary is like the limit, and the shadow people aren't in the boundary. They are outside of it, so they are in the Narrows with Richard and Kahlan as they walk through this super narrow path.
No, I know.
But there's a group of them. It's not just one line of shadow people. There's the front, and then there's more. You
think that they're all on the ground, though? Like, in your head, did you imagine just a semicircle of shadow people on the ground?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, in my head, it was way more terrifying.
Well, I think because of what Kahlan said earlier in the chapter about how the shadow people from the past would just kind of float, and these may or may not do that. It's dark, they can't really see. I kind of assumed that they did because of the weird way they moved and just came across their path and how Richard and Kahlan noticed them over this last little period. But I don't think they're floating in the air. I think maybe they float 6 inches above the ground, but they're not like up and above you. They're just here.
I feel like I would like that better. In my head, when I first read this, there was a whole bunch of grippers on the ground, and then there was like a vertical semicircle of shadow people, and it's like, fuck that. And you go in the Narrows like happy you're going in the Narrows.
Now, I see people to my left and my right, immediately to my left and my right. If I were to extend a hand, what would be backwards? Or if I were Richard reaching around Kahlan and beyond her, I would be reaching into this line of people. But there's nowhere for them to go other than straight. And for whatever reason, I don't know, But if he were to go beyond that, that would be into the boundary. So either way, you're screwed. But the only place that those people are not is directly where you're headed, which is through the Narrows.
Which, okay, couple things, real quick. I think it's a little strange that nothing is in the pathway ahead of them yet. Because, I mean, I just feel like if you were floating and living in the paths of the boundary, you could be randomly anywhere.
Yeah, that if you're not in the boundary, you don't have to stay within the bounds of the boundary. You could be outside anywhere other than directly next to the boundary.
Right, like grippers. You could have had a gripper on in the past.
Right, and it kind of almost points out a little bit of a inconsistency in the writing. Because and I don't say that lightly, but I don't get how everybody fits into the same tight little area. Maybe this whole situation is just bigger than I'm imagining it. And I'm even imagining this rock isn't just a big rock. It's like a mountain-sized rock. So there is space. There's a giant path. Some of these walls go way away before they curve up, So there is boundary there nearby, but physically they could maneuver to the left or to the right a good distance. But if all of this is so tight to where Kahlan and Richard are pressed together, and if they even take a step back, there's these people, and then beyond those people is the boundary, then we're only talking about maybe 8 feet wide at the most. At the most.
Well, and here's my other thought. With the grippers, slowest thing in the path. They're not going to get you unless you're sleeping, right? Addie literally said that. These things are all behind them. There's nothing in the path. They haven't mentioned walking over one yet, which is, this is what brought me to thinking about it. There should be some in the path, just like hanging out in the Narrows, just like hanging out, because you do that. If you're like a creepy little gripper bastard, you hang out in places like that, I would assume.
Right, exactly.
But they don't describe that. They don't describe stepping over any of them, but they keep coming closer. And they're supposed to be slow, but Richard and Kahlan aren't exactly, like, dawdling. They're walking fairly briskly, I would assume. So how the fuck are these things catching up to them? Don't like it.
I hadn't thought about that. And Addie didn't really go into any more detail when she said they were faster than a sleeping fool, but, they're not that fast. But still, just regular walking speed isn't that fast. Right. So you may not be able to sleep, but you may not be able to just be like, I'm going to move in 10 minutes and let it catch up and then we'll move again either. You have to keep going.
Right. They don't move gracefully. They move with an odd waddling gait. They sway side to side. They're not fast but steady. And once the Nightstone is out, the fucking shadow people start moving too. So everybody's moving, okay, at this point. But, yeah, I don't think that the grippers are moving very quickly at all. If you're moving briskly, you should be fine. Don't fucking stop. Just keep fucking going.
And this is exactly what Richard was afraid of. He didn't want to pull the sword or the stone out because he figured the people would get freaked out. And, well, look what happened.
It kind of seems like they were starting to be a little bit weird anyways. They formed a semicircle.
Yeah, they were definitely encroaching. I think Richard was right. They know that they're there, but they just can't tell exactly where. I don't think standing perfectly still really shows what these things would be doing if they knew you were there. They just didn't know where. Here's an example. We live in Michigan. It's hunting season. There are a million guys in the woods right now looking for a deer, and they shoot the deer, and sometimes it runs off because they don't always die right away. But so they have to look through the woods and try and find a blood trail. You don't just sit there and stand still. If you're trying to find something you know is there, you're just not sure where. You're fucking looking around.
Yeah.
You're trying to cover some ground, and maybe it's a mob mentality. If somebody finds him over there, they'll let me know, which could be, but that's just not the body language you would have hunting for something in the woods.
Well, yeah, I mean, they aren't trying to hide.
Right.
But they're standing still like they're standing still like they are. So it's a little bit weird. Kahlan stands frozen when she sees this shit until Richard grabs a fistful of her shirt and pulls her into the opening. Okay, real quick, I want to say, I've never heard her described as wearing a shirt. I know she got clothes from Chase's wife.
Yeah, she's wearing a traveling